Troy Weaver and the Detroit Pistons part ways. Tigers split the weekend series with Boston 2-2, and Spencer Torkelson has been sent down to Toledo. We break all that down on today's show.
And there's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Reggie Miller. And it's blocked again. What a block.
Lead pass in for Larkin. In space for Raymond. And he scores! Lucas Raymond!
Welcome back to Detroit Sports Talk. I hope you all had a nice long weekend. Today's date is June 3rd, 2024, and I am your host, Bobby Buckets. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, comment below your thoughts on today's topics, and reach out to me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. So, updates across the sports world. We've got two different finals going on. We got the NBA finals and the NHL finals that are coming up in a couple days. Mavericks versus the Celtics is set to begin on Thursday, June 6th for game one, and the NHL finals are now set after last night. The Edmonton Oilers win the Western Conference Finals in a 4-2 series against the Dallas Stars, and the Florida Panthers won the Eastern Conference Finals in a 4-2 series against the New York Rangers. So we have the Oilers versus the Panthers in the finals for the Stanley Cup. Begins on Saturday, June 8th. So we still got a couple days until finals begin. Thursday, June 6th for the NBA and Saturday, June 8th for the NHL. And these finals are super fun because it's teams that we normally do not see. Luka could be getting his first ring. Jason Tatum could be getting his first ring. And the Panthers have never won a cup, and the Oilers haven't won a cup since 1990 when Mark Messier was on the team and had 129 points in the regular season that year. So just kind of an exciting time where you're getting new teams, new players who are winning a ring for the first time. And that's just what competitive sports, fun sports is all about. So let's go ahead and dive into the firing of Troy Weaver by the Detroit Pistons. We had to start the first segment today by reacting to the big news that was released on Friday of Troy Weaver and the Detroit Pistons parting ways. Troy Weaver lasted 4 years in Detroit after being hired by OKC in 2020. To give you context as to who was on the team at that point, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, Sekou Doumbouya were still on the team. And just a couple months prior to hiring Troy, that's when Ed Stefanski was GM. He was hired as like a senior advisor to pick a GM, and then he just picked himself as GM. But he was the one who traded Andre Drummond just a few months prior for Brandon Knight, Justin Henson, and a second-round pick. So we had just gotten off of Andre. Blake and Derrick Rose were still on the team when Troy took over. But basically, I'm saying all this to say that Troy Weaver didn't start with anything. You know, you look at different rebuilds like Utah, who were able to trade Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. You look at OKC, who got off Russell Westbrook, Paul George. You look at Houston, who got off James Harden. All these teams that really were able to kick off a rebuild were able to trade their kind of star players or their best players for assets, whereas Andre Drummond, we were just trying to get off his deal, and we got a second-round pick back. Blake Griffin, we had to waive. We couldn't even trade Blake Griffin. We had to waive him and just eat his deal. So I want to give Troy the benefit of the doubt in that he didn't start with anything. So he kind of just was – he was starting in a much tougher spot than these other GMs were. But I will say he left the Pistons in a better spot than when he started, because now we have this young – talent on the team that we didn't have prior to. We have $64 million in cap. We don't have any long deals that are viewed as a negative asset or a negative contract. We don't have any of that on the team. So I will say Troy has teed up Trajan to really start in a strong position where you're starting with a couple top 5 picks on your team. You have young assets to move if you do want to trade to go get a big name guy. And you also have the cap space to be able to sign guys or trade for guys and absorb them into your space. So Troy did a good job in regards to setting Trajan up, teeing Trajan up to start from a good point. He just didn't do enough during his tenure to improve the team. In 2020, when he first started, they won 20 games. The year after, we won 23 games. The year after that, 17 games. In our last year, franchise worst, 14 games. So in the 4 years that Troy was here for, we never won over 23 games. In our last 3 years, we had only gotten worse. So I think the biggest issue for Troy, and I'm not trying to say this in a mean way, but it felt like he always thought he was the smartest guy in the room. And what I mean by that is you never really capitalized on your assets in Boyan, Alec Burks, Jeremy Grant. He admitted to saying in this past trade deadline that he had better offers for Boyan last year and then didn't trade it, didn't capitalize on maximizing your return. So for the Boyan and Alec Burks trade, I'm excited about Quentin Grimes and the fact that we got Quentin back. He could be a good 3-and-D player on this team. Hasn't looked like that so far just because he's been hurt. He played 6 games with us after the deadline, but he never capitalized on maximizing return for your assets. He never got any first-round picks back for taking on bad contracts like Joe Harris, taking on DeAndre Jordan. We took on Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel from New York when they went to go sign Jalen Brunson. Didn't get a first-round pick back, all seconds. So never really improved the draft capital situation because we still owe New York a pick from the Isaiah Stewart trade, where we're still trying to learn if that's ever going to convey. And that has kind of handicapped us from being able to trade a first-round pick in the future because this pick is projected this year, next year, and the year after that, all the way till 2027. So we just don't really have any draft capital, never capitalized on turning our vets into draft capital at their maximum value. He brought in a bunch of reclamation projects like Josh Jackson, Jahlil Okafor, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, and they were mostly big men, and it kind of seemed like he had a better perspective or a better view of these players than what the rest of the NBA did. So he thought that he could go get them and turn them into something that they hadn't been yet. And frankly, didn't work out, right? James Wiseman for Sadiq Bey. Sadiq Bey would have been the better fit for this team. We needed a power forward who could shoot threes. Marvin Bagley, you traded second-round picks along with some players to get him. You gave him a deal that was too long and too much and had to give second-round picks with him to the Wizards to get off of his deal. So just bringing in projects that never really panned out. And then he never hit on a second-round pick. Saban Lee, Isaiah Livers, Luka Garza, and then he also had draft and stashes in Balsa Koprivica and Gabriel Procida. They stayed overseas, never made it over here. So every second-round pick that he chose never hit. I think the tipping point for him after his seat kind of got hotter and hotter throughout the years as the team just didn't improve is that his big acquisitions last summer in improving the team were trading for Monty Morris for a second-round pick. Monty Morris would have been a great veteran point guard behind Cade Cunningham, but he missed the whole first half of the year with injury, played a couple games, and we shipped him off to Minnesota. And then we got a couple second-round picks with Joe Harris, and Joe Harris was making $20 million, took up a bunch of the cap space that you had. Did you hope that he could come in and be this movement shooter as opposed to he couldn't stay on the court, man. I mean, offensive, defensively, he just did not look good. And so if your big acquisitions are those two guys and you didn't really improve the team anywhere else, if you're banking on that internal development by your young guys, yet you're surrounding them with vets that can't even see the floor, it's just not a recipe for success. And we saw that in a franchise worse 14-68 record this year. So we may break down some of Troy's good moves and his bad moves later on in the week. But frankly, his downfall was just he sat on his hands too much and he didn't do enough. He thought that what he was doing, frankly, I approve of his overall game plan of taking on contracts with draft picks and trying to improve the team that way, but he didn't get enough back and he didn't get good players. You can take on contracts and get good players in return, but if you're taking on contracts and getting bad players in Joe Harris, who are never going to see the floor, it doesn't do you any good if you're not getting a first-round pick back, at least in return with that. So now we wait and see if we see any news about Monty Williams this week. Mark Stein had reported this weekend that there's going to be more meetings between Trajan and Monty, so we'll see if we have any more news later this week about possibly Monty Williams following Troy Weaver and being dismissed from his duties as well. So what are your thoughts on Troy Weaver and the Pistons parting ways this weekend? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. All right, next we're going to get into the Tigers this weekend, and we'll see how the weekend went first. So there was a 2-2 split with Boston. Game one, Tigers won 5-0. Jack Flaherty threw a pitching gem. He threw almost 7 innings with 1 hit, no runs, a walk, and 9 strikeouts. So he moves to 2-4, where Akil Baddoo, Riley Green, and Gio Urshela all hit home runs. In game 2, the Tigers lost 3-7. Kenta threw, and he did not last long. He had 8 hits and 5 earned runs in less than 5 innings. So not a great outing for Kenta. And he moves to 2-2 on the year, and I think this is kind of something we've touched on, or just a stat that I think kind of sums up these games very well. Boston went 5 for 11 when they had runners in scoring positions, and the Tigers went 1-7. So not only did you not hit as well when you had those opportunities, you did not have as many opportunities as Boston with men in scoring position. Game 3, similar situation. Reese Olson threw. Normally, Reese is a stud, but he had a Kenta-like outing and did not last long. 6 hits and 5 earned runs in less than 6 innings. Reese has moved to 1-6 on the year, even though his record is not reflective of how he has been pitching this year, given that the offense, for whatever reason, likes to disappear when Reese pitches. But Urshela hit another homer. Tigers were 1-5 with runners in scoring position, and Boston was 2 of 9. So neither were good with runners in scoring position. But again, Tigers only had that happen 5 times. Boston almost doubled with 9 times. Last game, game 4, Tigers won 8-4. Just a weird game. Game started out poorly. Casey Mize was pulled after 4 innings when the Tigers were down 0-3. Mize had 4 innings pitched, gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, and 4 walks. So Mize did not throw well. That's another one where it's like you see the Torkelson struggles, and then you see the Casey Mize struggles, and just for top draft picks, it's not something that is enjoyable to see. It was a good back and forth game, though. Tigers were able to get some runs in the middle of the game and eventually went to extras after it was tied up 4-4. And the Tigers wanted to put it away right away. They put up 4 more runs in the top of the 10th and won 8-4. So Tigers were 6 of 20 with runners in scoring position, and Boston went 2 of 11. So Tigers never had double-digit opportunities with runners in scoring position, and they ended up with 20 in Game 4. Weird that they're going to go ahead and score the most runs of that 4-game series when you maximize on your opportunities with runners in scoring position. So I think the biggest news out of the weekend, though, is that Spencer Torkelson has been optioned to Toledo, and Justin Henry Malloy from Toledo is being promoted to make his MLB debut. So let's briefly touch on some Torkelson stats. over the last however many games, just to give you some context of just how poor he has been as a baseball player. So in his last 10 games, he's batting .081. He is not even batting 100 in the last 10 games because he is 3 of 37. That's where that .081 batting average comes from. He is 3 of 37. And all 3 of those hits came in one game against the Toronto Blue Jays. So take out that one game. In 9 of his last 10 games, he's 0 for 32. He has played 9 games where he has gone hitless because 3 of those hits came in one game. And it's just a wild thing to go 0 for 32 as a baseball player, and especially as a first-round pick, 4 years ago? So if you look only at his last 4 games, he's 0 for 16, no walks, 9 strikeouts. So he didn't play in 2 out of the 4 games against Boston. He essentially is getting benched because he's playing so poorly. But yes, his last 4 games, he has 16 at-bats. He has not got a hit, and he has struck out 9 times. It's just a guy you can't play. Like every time that he's going up to bat, pitchers are happy because, one, throw him fastballs right down the middle. You know he's not swinging, and he can't hit fastballs in general. So I saw this stat from Evan from Free where Tork is hitting 106. So Tork is hitting just under 100 or just over 100 on fastballs this season that are 93 miles per hour or higher from right-handed pitchers. So the league average on that is 243. You took half of the league average, and Tork isn't even at that. So again, Tork is hitting 106 on fastballs from right-handed pitchers this season where fastballs are 93 miles per hour or faster. He can't time his fastballs. He can't hit fastballs that, frankly, aren't even that fast. So the reason why he's being sent down to AAA is because his timing has to get right. He's not hitting fastballs. He's not swinging at fastballs. I'm not sure if you even see him again in Detroit if he can't get this figured out. He very well could spend the rest of his season in Toledo because I just don't know. I don't know what you do. Like, I don't know enough about what it's like to be a hitting coach. I don't know, the hitting coaches on the Tigers currently, but it's like, what has happened from last year when he showed so much progress? What did he hit? Just 25, 30 homers. I think he got 31 maybe. I don't know. I should have looked it up. But he had such a great year where there was no issue with his hitting velocity, with him making contact. And so I don't doubt that there's a mental part to it to where he just doesn't have the confidence right now, but there's certainly something else going on with his form, with his timing, that maybe the minors is what he needs, where you're going to see people with less juice, less speed on their fastball, less movement on, their slider, on their curveball, can you build his confidence back up in the minors to where he can be swinging the bat like he was again last year? So most of all, I'm kind of giving credit to the organization for being willing to make the move. He's a 1-1 pick, and you're moving him down to AAA, and it's just like, it's almost, I want to give kudos to the organization because you're playing 500 ball. There are glimpses when this team is like, okay, maybe there's something to this where you can make some progress and try to get some games back. Right now, I think you're about 10 or 11 games back from first place. So maybe you can make a little bit of movement by taking Tork out of the lineup because, frankly, he's literally bringing you nothing. He's bringing all positives to the other team, and it's addition by subtraction at this point by getting him out of the lineup. So, I agree with the move, and good on the organization for doing it. So, what are your thoughts on Torkelson getting sent down? Do we see Tork play for Detroit again this year? Who knows? But let me know your thoughts in the comments below or over on Twitter. That is it for this episode of Detroit Sports Talk. We kind of combined segment 2 and 3 into one and just made it a Tiger segment. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, comment below to share your thoughts on today's topics, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. Thanks again for taking the time to tune in, and I will see you guys at the next episode. Peace.